Okay, I think I'm online. Maybe somebody can go to the YouTube link and see if it's actually working. But why don't we start by having everyone say your name and maybe which department or something like that you're coming from, and then we'll end with me, and then we'll start.
I'm Luke, PhD in Nutritional Sciences.
I'm Sam, I'm a PhD in molecular genetics.
I'm John, physics, PhD.
I'm Ahmed, and be starting my MSc in cell system biology.
And I'll be PhD in molecular genetics.
I'm Neil, PhD in molecular
And my name is Madeline, and I am a PhD student in physics here, so my office is actually right over there. And we're going to talk about version control. And this is a topic that is kind of personal because I only just kind of recently started using Git in real life. So I think if we want to talk about, anxious feelings and things like that, this is a good place to do that. So I'm borrowing a lot from actually Luke's lesson material because Luke taught Intro to Git last year. So everything that I do that's actually Git related is going to be from Luke. But then these slides, which I kind of also stole from Mozilla, are like the first part of it, and we're going to talk more about why people use version control and specifically Git. I think I have a good reason for why Git. Okay. So we're going to talk about how Git works and then why you should use it, and then actually go through some of the things that Git does for you when you're trying to do version control. So, okay. Why should you use Git? This is an actual folder from my computer. And this is something that I do a lot, and maybe you do it. So hands up if you do this, if this is something you do. Yeah, and then this is actually version control. Like when you do stuff like this, you are keeping a history of your changes so you can go back. So hands up if you've ever made a change and then wish you could go back to a previous version of your document because you wrote something cool and you erased it. If you're doing this, you probably thought that at one point or another. Hands up if you have ever, I'm trying to remember all of your things. If you've ever forgotten what you did in the past. So you've gone back to something a year later and you're like, why did I write this? What was I thinking? Yeah, totally. So like me, I was doing this. And in one sentence, what's the philosophy of a version control program like Git? It's that you should be saving only the changes. And this is opposed to the two extremes, which would be saving nothing, which is that you have only one version of your file and it's the most recent. And then you have problems where if you want to see a previous version or you want to make an experimental change, then you don't have the previous version to go back to, and each current version is the only thing you have. And the other extreme is saving everything. So like that cartoon, saving new versions each time, so you have like 100 files, as you go back and forth with supervisor or something like that. So the idea behind Git specifically, and also any version controlled program, is to keep track of just the changes you make. So at any time, there's only one file, but you can always go back to previous versions. And I think Dropbox and maybe Google Drive do this. You can kind of scroll through like time points. But the nice thing about a specific program is that you can decide when those checkpoints are and what the message is with it. So it's a little more helpful. So before we kind of get into more of why you should use version control, specifically Git versus GitHub. So put up your hand if you've heard of Git, I've never used it. How about GitHub? Any people who haven't used GitHub? So Git and GitHub are related, as the name suggests, but the way they're related is that Git is the actual piece of software. So Git is what you install and that does version control for you. And GitHub is a service that hosts files on some cloud and then you can access over the internet, and it uses Git in the backend to do version control. So you can actually do a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about in just GitHub. So if the command line is like freaky and stuff, you can do most things just on GitHub. So keep that in mind. Okay, so now it's going to get personal. We're going to start sharing anecdotes. I'm going to start with my anecdote, and you guys can say yours if you want. So I knew about Git. I had taken a little GitHub course back when I was an undergrad because my supervisor at the time wanted us to use it, and it made no sense whatsoever. So I didn't use it for many, many years because it was just too hard to adopt, basically. Like it was like the learning curve was way too high, it didn't seem worth it. And my current system, which is this, was working okay. And this kind of looks, I don't know, maybe you can tell me how it looks. Yeah, so actually this is okay. The only problem with it is if you don't keep good notes about what's where. So I started realizing after about a year of grad school that I could not find stuff. So everything was there, I just didn't know which dated folder it was in. So I knew that I had done this thing and I had made that plot, but I could not find it. And so I spent a lot of time like opening each folder and looking at it, and even like opening scripts in each folder and looking at them. And then I realized there could be a better way. And after a few times of sitting through the same workshop by Luke, it finally clicked. So why did I start using Git after all this time? So after doing that for about a year, yeah, I couldn't really find stuff anymore. And also at the same time, I was kind of being forced to use GitHub. So if you've noticed, U of T Coders kind of puts all their stuff on GitHub. And so when I was adding files to it, I was forced to do this through Git and GitHub, and then it kind of made me learn it. And then after all this time, I finally got comfortable using some of the commands, and then I had one of those aha moments where I realized that Git saved me from a mistake. So my code suddenly broke, and then I could go back to the previous version and see what change I had made that broke it. So that's kind of the standard example people give for why you should use version control. But there are many other reasons. So if I'm going to generalize my experience to what may be your experience, it would be some form of these steps. So first, probably all of you, so hands up if you've kind of reached step 1, that you've realized that you kind of want to keep past versions in some form. Yeah, and I think most people that are doing kind of serious work get to that point pretty quickly where you realize, oh wow, I need to like know what I did and when. So step 1 is taken care of. And then if you're like me, you experienced some kind of frustration as in you can't find stuff, or you forget what you did using your manual version control. And then optional number 3, being forced to use it with a colleague. And then 4 and 5, which are, we're going to talk about 4 mostly today, because I think that's the big one, is that there's a huge barrier because the commands don't make any sense, it's hard, and that's okay. So if it seems really awful, like, you know, just keep hearing about it and eventually it'll click, I think. Okay. And if you're still kind of cynical and you're like, I don't know, I don't really need to use Git, I just want to show you this data that I found from some community survey. The black line is Git, the green line is GitHub, and you'll notice that every other line, which is another version control piece of software, is going down. And Git and GitHub are going up. And this is from 2014. It's now 2 years later, so I expect that Git has like totally taken over. I don't have the data, but if you're cynical, probably somebody someday is going to ask you to use it. So it's a good time to learn it. So yeah, again, the philosophy of version control, instead of saving nothing or everything, you want to save just the changes. And now we'll see how Git implements this. And the same is true for GitHub. So the whole idea is that version control is this time machine that you can see previous versions of a file. So you're always at some state of your file. You can go backwards and forwards. And instead of having multiple copies at each of those points, you just have a list of the changes. And when you make a change, it's called a commit in Git. So you'll notice that these commands are kind of sillily named, I think. There's probably a reason in some weird programming background, but I don't know what it is, and they seem confusing. So you just have to accept that this is what the command is. So a commit is what you call it when you've made a change and you're saving it to your tracked history. And another terminology piece of thing, repository or repo, as you'll often hear, is where the files are kept. So that's just the high-level folder that houses your project. So if you go on the U of T Coders website, for example, and you find your way to our GitHub page, and you click on just the U of T Coders part of the address, you'll see a long list of projects that U of T Coders has. Each of those are different repos. And the idea behind a repo is that you should have a separate repo for each separate project that you're working on. So, you know, I have one repo for my master's thesis, and one for my current project, and one for the study group, and things like that. There's 2 more things that are going to be relevant for what we're going to do today. And that the first one is forking. So again, kind of a silly name. But a fork is what's called when there's some other repository that somebody else owns, and you fork it, which makes a copy of it in your own user base. So this normally is done on GitHub. And the idea with the fork is that whatever you do in your fork does not affect the original unless you want it to. And you can do whatever you want. You can make any changes you want. So often people will fork something and then make it different for themselves or something like that. And then lastly, a clone is an exact copy of a repository, usually from the cloud, from GitHub, onto your machine. And the idea behind a clone is that it would remain in sync with the higher up one. So typically how it goes is like, let's say, well, for this example, what we're going to do is we're going to fork the U of T coders repository and then clone it onto your computer. So now your clone of U of T coders is going to be in sync with your fork, which is owned by you, which is kind of connected sideways to the main U of T coders. Does anyone have questions about how that works? I think it'll make sense when we kind of go through it.
So you just clone it and then make changes versus.
Good question. So you can clone anything, really. You could just directly clone the U of T coders, but the problem with that is that if you're not actually an owner or somehow given access, you can't push your changes back. So you could make changes on your copy, but you wouldn't be able to sync it back with the original. Good question. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. First, did everyone download Git in some form? Okay, cool. So we're going to configure it if you haven't done this already. If you have, it doesn't hurt to do it again or anything like that. And then, as I said, we're going to fork U of T coders, clone it onto our machines, and then you're going to add yourself to our members list, which will go on the website. And that will help us see how this all works. Okay. Oh gosh. Sorry, I got a new computer and I think it's going to be really difficult for a while. This needs to be a lot bigger, right? Okay, so while I'm figuring out, oh no, that was the wrong way. While I'm figuring out my computer, open a terminal in some form. So if you're on Mac, this should just be a normal terminal. If you're on Windows, I think it'll be something called git bash. That's still really small, eh? Okay. One more. Okay. Dash, dash, dash.
I know why your these are on Dropbox.
Oh, why it's on Dropbox? So you can use Dropbox as like a private GitHub if you want. There's a way to kind of like make Dropbox be the where you pull and push to.
Instead of your own.
Sorry, I'm just gonna get out of here because this is the wrong directory.
You,
Okay.
you just don't use the .dot open structure.
I'm gonna add that to the tips list for Bash. Cool. Okay. So I was in one of my research directories, so now I'm in my home directory, and all of you know my path to my research folder. So yeah, so I'm on Dropbox because I have 2 computers now, and so I'm trying to like make sure everything's synced up. But basically, if you want, this is probably a good solution, is if you go to Documents, so I'm gonna navigate to Documents, and the command cd is change directory in Bash, so I'm gonna do cd Dropbox. Another Bash tip is if you start typing something and then hit tab, it'll complete it for you if there's only one option. If there's more than one option, it'll give you all the options if you hit tab again. So if I do D, okay, there's only one Documents. Cool. And if you, let's just see what's in there. So the command ls will show you what's in your Dropbox folder. Your Documents. I'm in the wrong Documents folder. Cool. Is everybody, hands up if you're in your Documents folder. Cool. So now, let's make a directory called GitHub. And the command for this is mkdir, and then GitHub. I'm going to call mine GitHub too, because I already have one called GitHub, but yours can just be GitHub. And then you hit ls again. You can see that now you have this new directory. And now we're going to go into GitHub. And you see there's nothing there. Okay. So now, before we go any further, let's go to the U of T Coders repository on GitHub. So the address for this is github.com/U of T Coders. I'm sorry, it's very tiny. Okay. So if you're on the U of T Coders website, clicking all kinds of stuff, go to study group, and in the top right-hand corner, click fork. So mine's gonna ask me where it should go, but if you only have one account, it'll just take you to your fork. So now instead of U of T Coders/study group at the top, it says my username/study group. So now this is my copy, I can do whatever I want with it. That's all mine. And now the next thing we're going to do is clone it onto our desktop. Before we do that, I realized I forgot to do the configuration step. So back in your terminal, hands up if you have not configured Git before. Okay, cool. So there's a few commands that are necessary, and they're basically just telling Git who you are, so that if anybody needs to know who committed something, it'll know your username. So the command for this is git config --global user.name and then my name. Oh, this is super awkward. Or your name specifically, and then hit enter. The next one is git config --global user.email. You enter your email address. Oh, for GitHub?
Yeah.
So the email address, I don't think it has to be the same as the one you use for GitHub. If you don't have a GitHub account, you'll need to make one. Sorry, I should have said that.
Okay, so this isn't related.
This is not yet related to GitHub, yeah.
Yeah, these config settings, just your name and email address are attached to every single commit you do as part of the commit message. So if someone else is looking at who did what, they will see the Madeline said the commit, they'll see that Madeline made that commit and know how to contact her. So that's the
If it's only your private repository, it'll only be you seeing that. Like nobody else can just kind of come in and look at your stuff, unless you let them.
So it's not like a ping, it's not to interface with GitHub.
but it won't.
No.
So that's like a.
The interfacing with GitHub, yeah. So what's going to happen is when you clone something from GitHub, all you need is the URL and it'll just copy it onto your computer. And then the only time that you need your GitHub information is when you're trying to add stuff back to GitHub. It'll probably ask you for your password. We'll probably see this happening. So when you've done that, if you're not sure what you've done before, or if you want to just check your configuration, you can type git config --list. And this will show you all of the settings that you had. If you're on Windows, I think there's a lot of automatic settings that are filled in for you. Apparently Ubuntu doesn't do that. So these are all my only settings. The other two that we'll do are just changing the color so it looks nice and setting your editor. Another git config -- global color.ui. So yeah, that's all one line. Git config -- global color.ui auto. And then the last one is to set your editor. So if you have a favorite editor, so something like Nano or Notepad or Atom, are any of these names sounding familiar? I don't know what Mac people use. What's this kind of standard text editor on Mac? Vim? Ugh. Don't do Vim. You can do Vim if you want, but Vim is kind of like hard to use, I think. Or it's just has a lot of commands.
It's like once you get used to it, it's
Okay.
go back. It's too hard.
If you're a Vim person, you can put Vim. I'm gonna use Nano because I think that's just what I have. So same thing, git config -- global core.editor, whatever the name of your editor is. So if you want to see if that worked, you can just type the name of the editor into the command line and hit enter. And it should open the text editor. So now this is my text editor. I can type, I'm not going to. I will not save changes. So hands up if that did not work, or if you're still working on it. Okay, looks like we're good to go. Okay, so now the next step is to clone the repository that you just forked into your account. So back on the website, there's this green button here that says clone or download. And you can click this button that'll copy the link to your clipboard. And you want to use HTTPS. I think SSH is just harder to set up. I've never used it. And back in the directory that you want it to be in, hit git clone, and then paste that link. If you're using git bash, you can paste. It's really kind of confusing, but if you click on the top of the window and then go to edit and then paste, you can paste.
Do you have any way to see where she copied in?
No,
Okay. So on your fork, so it should say your username / study group. And then this green button, clone or download. And then click this button here that says copy to clipboard. And then you can just paste it into the terminal after the command git clone. And you see a bunch of stuff, which is you'll learn is the reassuring message that Git is doing stuff for you. And now let's see what we have here. So if you do ls, which is list and shows you what's in your folder, now there's a new folder called study group. So after you've done git clone, have you? Yeah?
It's working.
It's working? Okay, awesome. So once that's finished running, if you type ls, then it'll show you that there's a new folder there called study group. And so now let's go into that folder, cd study group. And again, I'm going to use tab completion because I don't trust myself at spelling. And let's see what's in here. So again, ls. And you can see a lot of things. On my computer, folders are in blue and files are in white. But if you want to know what's a folder, you can do ls-f. It'll show handy slashes after folders. One more command, pwd is print working directory. So this tells me where I am. I'm at home, Madeline, documents, GitHub, study group. Okay. So now let's see what's up. The command to kind of see what's going on in Git is git status. So let's try git status. And it says, I'm on branch GH pages, which is the name of the branch. I'm up to date with origin. So origin is the default name that Git gives to the thing that you clone from. So in this case, origin is your fork on GitHub, if that makes sense. Nothing to commit working directory cleans. This means I haven't made any changes. So now we're gonna edit the members file in the data folder to add yourself to the website. If you don't want to actually be on the website, you don't have to actually submit a pull request. Or you can submit the pull request and say, please don't actually merge this. We'll get there. It's okay. It's safe to do this, I promise. So in the folder data over here, so let's look into there, cd data. And again, ls to see what's going on. There's only one file called members.yml. So if I wanted to see what's in that file, members.yml, the command cat will show me the contents of a file. It also does other things like adding files together. But if you just do cat and then a file name, so cat members.yml, it'll print to the screen the contents of that file. So there's me. So it's got a list of people in alphabetical order, I think, of last name. This will be a fun challenge for you. Put yourself in the alphabet. Okay. So we've seen that this is a list of members, so you're going to add yourself to this list now. So the way that you edit it is whatever editor you're using, type that, and then members.yml. And now I can edit this file. Put up your hand once you're looking at something like this.
You can also navigate the file tree in any way you like. The command line is in the file. Should be set. You can use like a file browser.
Yeah, so actually that's a good point. If you want to edit this, if you're more comfortable just clicking on the file name in a folder, then you can say, take a file browser, navigate to it. Whoa, I keep clicking on trash for some reason. Okay. And you can also edit it however you like there. This will work just fine. So if you navigate to Citigroup_data and then the file and just click on it, you can just type in whatever editor comes up naturally. That's fine too.
So I save this file, save all the copy in my folder.
Yeah, so it's not automatically saved. The thing about Git is that everything is manual, so you have a lot of control, but it doesn't think it's going to do something for you. That makes sense, and it doesn't for some strange reason. But I'll show you how that goes. So now add yourself to the file. For now, just add your name. I'm going to add some other things because I'm already on here. Just cats. And once you've made a change, it doesn't have to be the whole thing, just any change. Save that file. Now you're back in your folder on the command line.
Can you type capital P, capital S, 1 equals quote, $sign,
Oh, get the
$sign, space, quote. It's only for that instance.
Okay, so now let's see what happened. Type git status. And now it shows me that I have a modified file. And it's red because I haven't yet told Git that it should be watching this file. So it says modified members.yml. And now the sequence that you have to do, and actually there's a little helpful help message here in case you forget. There's two things. You have to do git add, the file name, and then git commit and a message. And the reason there's two steps is kind of strange and hard to understand. I don't really know why. Well, I guess it makes sense that there's two stages. The idea is that let's say you made changes in like a bunch of unrelated things, and you wanted to group them by a specific message or type of change. So you wanted to add all the files that related to one thing at one time, and then the other ones another time. So you can add certain files, and then commit them, and then add a different group of files and commit them. You have control over what goes into the commit each time. So if I do git add members.yml and git status again to see what happened. Now it's in green, so now it's ready to be committed. I've told Git to be watching it, and then I'm ready to commit. And the way to commit something is git commit. You can just type git commit and enter. If you do, it'll open your text editor that you set as default and ask you to enter a message, because you can't commit anything without a message. And this is good because future you will love that. When you're going back and thinking like, oh no, why did I make this change? There'll always be a message that says what the change is. So you should try to make the message as descriptive as possible. You can add a message just in the command line by typing -m, the flag -m, then your message in quotes. Added some interests. You don't need to say, I don't need to say I added cats and ice cream as my interests. I don't have to be that explicit, but you can be pretty explicit in a submit message. Enter. If I do git status, it says I'm on the branch change pages. I have nothing to commit because I've just committed my changes. But now it's helpfully telling me that I'm ahead of the thing that I cloned from by one commit. So now let's make another change and see the power of git diff. So actually first, there's one more command. Git log will show you the history of commits. So probably it'll show you yours at the top, and then probably the next one down. I'm not sure if everyone's seen this. Probably the next one down is for Luke, because you're seeing all the commits that have gone into the thing that you forked and then cloned. If you want to get out of that, type Q. Otherwise, you have to scroll all the way to the bottom of the log, and that's going to take a long time. So Q will get you out of that. Okay, let's make another change in that file. I'm going to be a little more serious. Add bio. One more git status. Show me that again. I've modified members.yml. So if you want to see what the changes that you made, there's a really handy command called git diff. So if I type git diff with no flags or anything, it'll show me all the changes between my current state and the previous commit. So in this case, there's only one file that I changed. If you change lots of files, it will show you them all in a row. And so the important parts here are in red, things that I took out. Can everyone see it? It's pretty dark, kind of. Make it brighter.
You can always change the color scheme instead of trying to edit.
Let's try a different palette. Not sure what happened. Okay, we'll just go with it.
Oh, there's uncheck the use colors from system. Go down to colors, uncheck the use, and then built-in schemes. And then it should be black and white.
Shiny. That's much better. Okay. You can also do git diff with the flag for the particular file, so -- space, I can't remember. Let's try this. Yeah.
Imagine now you want to go back to the first file. Now you want to find it and you want to.
Right. You realize that was the one you wanted, or you just want to look at it, let's say. Cool. So that is, I think that was the thing that learning how to use made me use Git, because otherwise what's the point of saving all these changes, right? So let's talk about that. That's a good point. The command for that is git checkout. there's a couple options. So let's say I'm going to type git log again to see what that commit was. Actually, first, before we do that, this will make more sense if we commit that change, so we can actually go back in time. So type git status, I made a change, git add, members.yml. I don't need to keep typing git status, it's just nice to do because then you know what's going on. Now if I do git log, there's two commits that are both for me, so this will make sense when we go back and look at them. So let's say that I like the version that I had cats and ice cream better. So the important thing when you look at git log is this commit ID at the top here. And each commit ID is totally unique in all of history. So this commit ID is for that change that you made, and nobody else's commit ID will ever be the same. So that is like the unique identifier. But that being said, it's kind of excessively long. So when you're actually referencing commits, you need only the first, what is it, 5? Yeah, you can try a few. If it doesn't think it's enough, it'll ask you for more. Sorry, keep looking everywhere. Okay. So if you want to go back in time to a particular commit, you can do, maybe this isn't the best thing to start with. I'll start with this. Git checkout 78F. So you'll be typing whatever the commit ID is, the first couple of characters for you. So I'm now in what's called a detached head state, which means that if I make a change here, nothing points to it. And if I go back to my current state, my most latest commit, then eventually that change will be lost. So there's ways around this. If I'm here and I realize I want to start making changes from this state, I can create a branch. We're not going to talk about that. But you can also pull just individual files into your current state. And that's probably a better way to do what you asked about. So now that I've checked this previous commit, I'm going to navigate to this file so you can see what it looks like. So I'm in this previous commit. If I look at members.yml, it's very small. How do I make this bigger? Okay, it's really tiny, but it's got cats and ice cream, so it's got the previous change that I made and not the most recent change. So when you check out a previous commit, your entire working directory goes back to the state that it was.
Can you show navigate?
Yeah. I'm gonna go back to where I was. I type the name of the branch, which in this case is GH pages. Okay. Okay, so now I'm back where I started. So to go back in time to a previous commit, the command is git checkout and the name of that commit. Another bash tip, if you want to, sorry, I spelled that wrong. Checkout. If you want to go back to the previous command, you can use up tab. So this is the command that I typed that took me back in time. So you got that? Cool. So now if I do that, your working directory changes. Let's reload it. Okay. If I go back to my current state and reload this file, you can see that now it's from the latest commit. So yeah, that's one way to look back at the entire state of your directory in time. If you wanted to just take that file from a previous time, you can do git checkout the commit ID again, 78F65, and then dash dash. This is why tab completion is great, because then you don't spell things. The name of the file. So if we do git log, if we had actually gone back to this commit, the second commit here, then the log wouldn't be showing me the most recent commit. It would think I was just in that state. But because we just pulled the file into the current directory, basically, I'm still in my previous head state. So now if I do git status, it'll say that that file has been modified because it's now different from the last commit that I made because it's gone back to the previous version. So if you decide you like that one better, you can now commit it and say, I'm changing to my previous version. So let's try that. And because it's in green, I don't have to do git add. I can just do git commit.
So, just when we take the git commit and just the commit number,
Mhm.
change the whole directory.
Yeah.
How do you get?
How do you get back to your current state? Yeah, git checkout, and then the name of the branch that you are on. So usually it'd be master, but in this case it's GH pages because that's the name of the master branch. So git checkout
Right now.
GH pages.
GH pages, this one.
GH pages, yeah. This one. Okay, if you are satisfied with your change, you don't have to be satisfied, you can still make more changes. But let's try adding it to your clone copy on GitHub. So the command for that is git push. And again, it helpfully suggested that I do that in this little help message. So Git's kind of status messages are often helpful, like that's what you would normally do next. So it's telling me that I'm now ahead of the clone copy and I can add my changes by typing git push. So when I hit enter, it'll prompt me for my username and password. If you don't want to do this all the time, you can change the setting in your config.
So what was the git question in number 5?
No, just git push, just git push. There are things you can add to it. You can specify the name of the branch if you want. But if you just type git push, it'll automatically push to the corresponding branch on the origin. Okay, so now let's go back to your clone on GitHub and see what happened. Let me know if I need to go back to the command line. Yeah. Git push, yeah. There, git push.
What did you unattach that?
Yeah,
We did check out
And branch?
the branch.
yeah, branch, yeah.
Normally it said master, but in this case it's GH pages.
When you're in that state, if you end up doing that, or if you check out a previous version of a file, the list of options will tell you things like use git reset head -- file to unstage. So if you let's say decide you don't actually want to commit that file, you can remove it from the staging area, or you can discard the changes that file. So let's say you want to look at it, but you don't actually want to keep it, you can then discard it and keep your current version. So there's different options once you're there. So now I'm on GitHub and I refreshed it and I see my most recent commit. And it will show me that commit. If I click on it, and these are the changes that I made. I took out bioinformatics and added cats and ice cream. So if you would rather use GitHub for browsing your history, let's see, if you click on commits here, this will show you the same kind of thing as git log, but in maybe a nicer way to look at. So these are the 3 commits that I just made to members.yml. And if you click on this button here, it'll take you back in time to the repository. It's kind of like doing git checkout in that commit ID. So, but now I can look at it on GitHub. So now I'm in, instead of being the GH pages branch, I'm in this commit. And I can look around and see that file. There's it. Data. And that's the way that I changed it the first time. Okay, very last thing. If I now want this to be added to the study group version of this, because right now I made the change in my fork, but the UT coders version has been untouched. So to do that, it's called a pull request. So first I'm gonna get in my tree. Now on GitHub, it's much easier to get out of this detached head state. Basically, anywhere you click is going to take you out of it. So I don't know, I'm just going to click here. Oh no, I'm not. Okay, let's click here instead. Okay, now I'm back at the most recent commit. So it's a little confusing when you're using the UT coders branch because our UT coders repo is actually a fork from another repository. So normally there would be a bar here that says this branch is one commit ahead of the branch that you forked from, but instead it thinks it wants to compare with the Mozilla Science version. So if I click pull request here, there's a few ways to create pull request. You can go to the pull request tab, you can click pull request here, it'll all kind of take you to the same place. And the key part here is to make sure you get this right, so what you're comparing between. So right now, as I said, it thinks we want to merge with the Mozilla Science branch, but actually want a UT coders. So you can see there's lots of people who forked the Mozilla Science one. The UT coders is right at the top. And now this looks a little more sensible. Well, sorry. So the base is wherever you want your changes to go into. The head is wherever you are currently sitting. So head is me, GH pages. You can change this. So if you want to pretend you're sitting somewhere else, I could pretend that I'm sitting in UT coders and merge stuff into mine. But right now we're going the other way. It'll have things like the list of commits. It'll show the file that I changed. There's also a place to have a conversation after I make this pull request. Okay, so I like that, so I'm going to click create pull request. Now I can add a title. Updated my file. You can add a more detailed comment if you want. And then, again, it shows you all the stuff, the commit, the file changed. When you're happy, you can click create pull request. Now, if you look at the pull requests on UT coders, this is from me a couple hours ago. This is the one that I just did. If you're doing this, then I'll keep refreshing and we should see, oh, here's another one. Okay, cool. If you don't want this to be merged, then you can add a comment like, please don't merge this. Or, fun thing you can do, if you want to edit this at all, if you want to make your file a little fancier, any changes that you make and then push while in the same branch will just get added automatically to the pull request. So if you keep changing stuff, it'll keep adding it to that pull request. So if you go home tonight and you want to make some changes before the request gets merged, you can do that. That's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. I think I'll stop the stream and then we can have some questions and stuff. Oh no.